Hello and welcome back to my craft room. It's time to finish my third pennant for my boho bunting. I'm getting a nice little colourful pile building up there now. So this is the one I've done this week. It's for week 3. Let's go down to the desk and I'll show you where I've got to. So here's my little bag of all my kit for my slow stitching projects. Here's my orts jar where I've been collecting all the bits from this project and others as I've gone along. Now for me, orts is tiny scraps. It's not just threads, it's tiny scraps that I don't know what else to do with really but I can't bring myself to thread them away, and I love the mixture of colours that's building up. And even if I only use them for stuffing tiny pin cushions and things, that's fine. I'm determined not to throw anything away from these scrap bags. I'll show you what I've done with this one. So since I finished, I have put the backing on the same as I did the first time. I used a bit of one of my husband's old shirts there, and I've just done a running stitch through all the layers there, kind of running top stitch. I think at the end of the last video I had just put the basic pieces together. I hadn't put the backing on, and I'd added this little, I suppose, floral motif that came in one of the bizarre scrap bags. See if I can get it to focus. That's better. And you can see I've just done a mixture of really simple stitches around it. So I've done a chain and a couple of running stitches down the centre where the two pieces of fabric join. Here, this one, so those two lines, that one and that one, they were just a running stitch, and then I took a contrasting stranded embroidery thread and run it in and out of the running stitch, which is quite fun to do. I've done that also around here, but this time it's not contrasting, it's the same colour. I quite like that effect. So on this side I did some French knots, and on this side I just stuck to basically the running stitch. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I didn't go too mad on the embroidery. I didn't bother embroidering into the pattern or the printed pattern this week. Done that the last 2 weeks, so like I've done here, that was actually just stitching straight over the pattern that was printed onto the fabric. But I've done that 2 weeks running. I didn't feel like doing it again this week. I wanted to keep this relatively simple because for me this week the fun part is going to be the tassel I'm going to make to go on the end of this point. And what I want to do, is use some of these little trims that came in the scrap bags, and also some bits and bobs out of my orts jar. There's loads and loads of different ways you can make tassels. I'm going to make this one a reasonably simple one, I think, but you know, things do have a way of getting out of hand. I get carried away as I go along. So this is one of the little bobbles that came in the scrap bags. This is a bead that was just out of my stash. I've just got a jar of wooden beads. I think what I might try and do is cover that either in fabric or threads or a mixture of the two. These beads also came in the scrap bags, so I might have 2 or 3 of those running up. So yeah, I could try and cover one of my beads, obviously as neatly do a neater job than that. You can see where I'm coming from though, and possibly run some thread around as well. And then I think I'm just going to use, this actually didn't come out of scrap bags. I found this in my ribbon box I was going through yesterday, and this just sort of scraps, and I thought they would go nicely with the colours, because I want each week to be a slightly different colour story, but I want them all to kind of work together as well. But I love a splash of bright colour. I love contrasting colours and kind of deliberately clashing them sometimes. So yeah, but these, you can see that these go quite well with all of the ones I've done so far. So I want to use some of them, and I'm going to keep that to one side because I think that will cover the bead nicely. I'm going to use some little strips of ribbon. I've also got the sari ribbon that I've used before. This is one piece that I kept aside, so I might use a little bit of that. And I think I'll use a combination of the lengths of ribbons and trims, and I'll also do some little torn strips of fabric and see how that works. So if I tip out my orts jar, let's see what I can pick out that I think might work. So obviously really tiny pieces like that I'm not going to be able to use for my tassels, but say that strip ended up in there. I can definitely use some of these because they will help to pull together with the pennants I've made before, because I use these fabrics. So all of these tiny strips can definitely be used for the tassels. I will use the tiny strips before I use the bigger pieces. Yeah. So if I've got a strip like that, I'm gonna keep this. In fact, that shouldn't even go in the orts jar. It's too big. And this is too wide, but I would tear it down. That's quite good. I've used that definitely in one of the pennants. This I think came out of my ribbon scrap box, so but the colours work, so I'm going to throw some of that in. I use that for the backing on one of them, so that would be good. Even these tiny frayed strips of that's a tiny bit of that husband shirt fabric, but that would be perfect for part of the fringing of the tassel. Chuck all this back in the jar. But these are all the bits and bobs that I've got to make my tassel with. So what I want to do now is make up a little bundle. I want my tassel pieces to be twice the length of the fringing that I want to end up with. So I probably want it to be about, I don't want it to be ridiculously long because I've got the beads as well. It just needs to be about that long. Okay, let's go for that. Right, that's decided. So this is going to be the length of my tassel fringing. It looks quite short, but by the time I've got the beads and stuff on the top as well, that's going to be plenty long enough. So if this is too thick, what I'm going to do is tear it into probably 3 strips if I can. Let's have a go. Yep. Now these threads, if they're long enough, can also be included in my fringing. So I'm just going to work through this pile of stuff now and just tear everything down into strips and arrange it all neatly together, ready to turn into my tassel fringing. So I'm going to stop recording now and I'll come back and show you when I've done that. Right, I've finished tearing up little strips and added in a few lengths of thread and things that I came across. I think that's probably more than enough to make my tassel, and there are bits of all sorts of the fabrics and trims that I've already used in my pennants. So I need to make sure they're all lined up nicely. And I've sort of tried to arrange them so the colours are sort of fairly evenly mixed all through the bundle, but it's not going to matter too much. I might just add some little lengths of embroidery thread as well, just for a bit of contrast. There, leave these all 6 strands together, make them a bit chunkier, but it's just I wanted to have a good mixture of different weights and textures in this tassel and colours. There. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm taking some more of this thread and I'm just leaving it so this is just normal stranded embroidery thread. I'm leaving all 6 strands because I want it to be nice and strong, and I'm going to lay my little bundle on top of the thread, so it's about halfway. It's all a bit rough and ready as usual. And then I'm just going to tie this bundle together. I'm kind of making this up as I go along, but I have made tassels before, and like I said earlier, there are lots of different ways of making tassels. I want to make this a fairly easy one. I'm going to wrap that thread around. Tie it again. Make a little extra knot just to keep it all secure. Okay, and that's kind of the beginning of my tassel. I'm going to leave this long tail here because I shall need that for threading it all together with the beads later on. So you can kind of see how this is going to come together. Next thing I want to do is to bind the tassel around, sort of give it a neck. Now I've forgotten what this is called. Silk binding or something. I've used it in jewellery before. I'm hoping I can still remember how to do it. And I think I shall use the same colour thread again. And it's a way of binding, so you quite often you'll use it on leather embroidery, or if you're using a lot of cording and things, and you want to bind them all together, so you want it kind of bound around like that, but you want the ends to be tucked inside. You want it all to be secure, but you don't want the ends sticking out anywhere. So that's what this technique is for. You call it silk binding. Okay, let's hope this is going to be like riding a bike and I can still remember how to do it. Right, so I've got my tassel all ready to go. I've kind of gathered it all together like that. I'm going to take this, quite a good length of this embroidery thread, all 6 strands, and I'm going to fold over a good 6 or 8 inches. I don't know, yeah, 15-20 centimetres, something like that, like this. I'm going to lay that over my tassel, leaving the loop to one side, and hold that all together with my thumb, so it's like this. Then this shorter end I'm just going to leave dangling for now. You can see why you need to have enough to get hold of in a minute, and it also needs to be significantly longer than the tassel fringing, so you don't get them mixed up together. And now I'm going to take this longer tail, and keeping hold of this bit with my thumb, I'm going to wrap this around. The first couple of wraps are the hardest. Just tweaking that as I go, leaving this dangling, keeping hold of everything in my left with my left thumb, and I'm just going to start wrapping around this tassel to create the little neck. And I'm starting on the right and wrapping towards the left, towards this loop, pulling it fairly tightly as I go and wrapping it in such a way that it doesn't leave too much of a gap, so you can see. There. Okay, keep going a little bit till it looks how I want it to. You could make a really long wrap, but this is a little bit fiddly, so okay, pulling it fairly tightly but not ridiculously tight. I just want it to neat, but I don't want it so tight that I can't pull my thread through in a minute. Okay, so I've done about, how many have I done? 7 wraps around there, something like that, just till I feel it looks okay. And I come up to this point, and I'm going to put this thread, this longer end I've been working with, through that loop. Like that. Okay, so that shorter, that longer end that I've been wrapping around has now gone through the loop, and I'm going to let it go. And now I'm going to take hold of my shorter tail again, and I'm going to pull it. So I'm still sort of keeping everything anchored with my left hand here, and I'm just not going too fast, I'm just gently pulling, and it's very hard to hold this so that you can see it and still do what I need to do. And then as I keep pulling, that end that I've been working with, that I've been wrapping around, is getting pulled back inside. So I've actually pulled my working end all the way through. Ooh. All the way through and out the other side now. I'm now going to tweak it so that both ends are inside. There we are. I've pulled that end a little bit, pulled that end a little bit, and now if you look, you can see that both ends are tucked away inside. So I'm just going to snick this little end now, because that should be all secure. And then this other end, I guess I could just lose in amongst the other fringy bits. That gives it a nice little neck to my tassel. And now I can use this long tail that I left, I can use to thread my beads and things on. And that's my colourful raggedy tassel. I love the look of that. Obviously you can make it a lot neater if you wanted to, but I like the messy look, as you know. So now I want to take this thread and put it through the centre of this little pom-pommy thing. There we go. So that's giving it a little top. And then my next idea was to cover this little bead in fabric. I'm wondering if I'm just getting a bit carried away and it's going to get a bit too long. Otherwise it's going to be too long to go with all these, isn't it? Yeah, I think I'll keep this covered bead idea for another tassel, for a future flag. I think I need to know when to stop sometimes. So I've got different choices to what I can do with this now. Never tried this before, but I think it will look nice. It looks nice in my head. I'm gonna just kind of wrap the thread around this pom-pom, leading them back through that loop as well to make everything extra secure and look pretty. Made a bit of a mess there, but you know, I'm not going to worry about it. You know me. Right, there's my little tassel all ready to go. Now all I need to do is use what's left of this tail just to stitch it onto the point of my triangle. That's fine. I'm just gonna do one little stitch here to anchor it all together, and then just lose the end up inside the fabric somewhere. There, I'm really pleased with that. That's I think that's really fun and cute, and it's nice to use up those little tiny scraps. So that's week 3, all done and dusted. I think that's really fun. I like that. I'm definitely going to be making more tassels, and there are so many different ways to make tassels and beads with some of these scraps, so definitely will be doing some more of them along the way. And here's all 3 of them together. 1, 2, 3. There. They're going to look really fun hung up in my room, or oops, in the house somewhere. I quite like the look of them just like that, all together. Almost, you could almost have them as like a little book if I didn't want to hang them up. Yeah, and then I could keep them in one of those sari bags, couldn't I? So see how that goes. Anyway, thanks very much for watching that. That's me all done for my bunting for this week. So So I've done a triangle, a horseshoe and a rectangle. I might do the fishtail shape next week. That'd be a bit different. Yeah, have a bit of a think about that. Oh, then I can make 2 tassels, 1 for each point. Okay, I'm going to say my goodbyes now. Have a lovely week. Thanks for joining me today, and happy stitching. Bye.